Hi, and good evening. My name is Fred Dunwoody. I'm your host tonight for Overtime, LIASB's online business development session. Today, our guest speaker is Andy Weitzberg, president of HIPAA Continuity Consultants, and also a past president and board member of the Association of Contingency Planners, the Long Island chapter. Welcome to the show, Andy.
Thank you, Fred, and thank you for having me.
Most people have a question: what is compliance? And I guess dependent upon the area of your business, what industry you work in, or your job title within the company, that question has many different components or parts. It brings me to something that Albert Einstein often said, or is often quoted as saying, to answer a question, if I had 20 days to solve a problem, I would spend 19 days to define it. So the first question people need to be asking, are you asking the right question? So when we talk about the questions people should ask, Andy, when people come to you as far as, how to judge or assess their posture and overall picture in terms of dealing with compliance and security questions, do you find that the average business person really doesn't understand the depth of what they should be looking at?
I totally agree with that statement. In the last 20 years, the connectivity and the use of technology and internet has dramatically changed the entire business world. Look, in 1996, we were still using, I was still using Alta Vista, and most people still had dial-up internet connections. There was no Optimum Online or Fios Ethernet coming to our homes or our businesses. And right now, we're connected. When you have computers on a network, you are now connected to the world. And it's like, and it can be like leaving your front door open. So that's why compliance becomes so important, because your door is open. And we've got to make sure that nobody that shouldn't be coming in there gets in.
Very interesting. So we have 7 questions that could possibly help people understand their posture and overall picture. And I'd like to bring those up with you and have you expand on what people really should be looking for. So what is your biggest compliance concern? And is your security spend and expertise properly allocated to address that risk? Can you expand on that?
We all use computers today. Most of us are on it all day long or on and off of it. It's either our computers or our smartphones. We're always connected. But on a regular basis, you're getting updates or patches. Microsoft sends out patches several times a month. Samsung sends out patches and updates on my computer, on the network, on my smartphone, and I'm sure, and Apple does the same thing. Are you installing them? Are you keeping the security and your programs up to date? Because if they're not, you're putting yourself at risk. It's that simple. I just read an article which said that 52% of all the companies out there are still using Microsoft XP. Well, Microsoft XP hasn't been updated in almost 5 years. So it opens up a whole door into your network.
So it sounds like there's a lot that a business owner would have to take into consideration. Even, again, you may have an understanding as far as one type of risk, but that could lead to a domino effect of other things that you need to potentially address and be concerned about.
Right. The simple things I talk about is, do you have a firewall? Is your firewall up to date? Have you changed the password on your firewall? So it's encrypted? Are your computers encrypted? Most of the computers today, the new systems, you can turn on encryption that's already built into the system. All you have to do is turn it on. Somebody just recently asked me about an Apple computer. They they made an appointment, went into an Apple store, and in 5 minutes, one of their techs had turned on their encryption for them. It's the simple things. We're not even going to get to the complicated things, just the simple things. Do you have a password to get in there? Right. Does your cell phone have a password on it? Cell phones, you can do it. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is not a password. No, it's an open door.
Yeah, and it's interesting statistic-wise how many people still use password as a password for their systems and critical information.
Most used password available.
All right. So our second question is, do you have a clear picture of your overall security and compliance posture and of how it relates to industry best practices? So again, a small business owner, even a mid-sized business owner, if you have the people in place that can address those issues, that's great. But for a small company that doesn't have those resources, what's the best way for them to get an understanding of whether or not their security and compliance, what they have in place, meets those industry best practices?
The problem comes back to how much do you understand about operating the computers and the computer systems. If you're not conversant in how to protect your systems, then you should use an outside resource. There are plenty of IT people out there, services that you can purchase inexpensively. And now with Microsoft, you have Microsoft 365 that has a compliant component. You can get the compliant version of that. Apple has compliant conversions of their operating systems. You want to put that into practice. That will help you take some of the risk out of this. The biggest problem I find is that people don't know the questions to ask, and the IT people don't know how to talk to the business owners. So ask questions. Don't be afraid. There's no such thing as a stupid question. If you don't know, the people you do business with should be willing to spend a few minutes to explain it to you so that you understand, have a general idea of what's going on, and you want to make sure that they are doing what they are supposed to do. I just ran into a situation at a medical office where the IT fellow hadn't done his patching in 6 years. It wasn't until we talked about coming in to do a risk assessment that all of a sudden he got busy updating the system the way it was supposed to be updated. So, and the owner of the business hadn't even thought to ask anything. So it was his friend.
Well, sometimes that's like doing business with relatives and everything else. They may have your best interests at heart, but when it comes to critical things like as far as being in compliance and security, it sounds like the best rule of thumb is to talk to somebody who does it for a living and who is knowledgeable.
And talk to the people that you know in your own business. Ask them what they're doing. These are people that you may do business with. Don't be afraid to ask. They can give you an idea of what they want to see, they'd like to see, or what they are doing. You're not an island. So, Talk to other people. Don't be afraid of it.
Okay.
That's the most important thing. We learn a lot by hearing other people's experiences.
Mm. All right, so our third question is, do you currently conduct security and compliance assessments? And you kind of touched on that in just a few minutes ago.
Yeah. It's something that should be done at least once a year, at the very least. Hopefully more than that, but at least once a year. There are programs out there that you can get. There's all kinds of software that's out there that's inexpensive that you can run to see, do you have your controls to keep people out. It's there. You can walk into several of the computer stores, look on the shelves, read, go up to Amazon, or go to many of the other sites that are on the internet and read a little bit. Get an idea of what you think will work for you. Install a program. Watch what's going on. It'll tell. There are many services that are very inexpensive that will do a sweep of your computers.
Okay. And
you should do that.
And I would also imagine that, in regards to not just your physical, the physical aspect of your business, whether it's your computers and networks and things of that nature, you also have to take into consideration the people aspect of a business. And
absolutely.
That they are doing all the proper things and following your policies and procedures. But that all can be done if you do have a proper assessment.
Yes. Well, the biggest thing today is ransomware and phishing. Phishing, spelled P-H-I-S-H. And basically, it's somebody trying to trick your employees into giving them information to let them into your system. You have to be aware of this. Your employees need to be trained to not allow that to happen. And the email may be right. It may look like it comes from somebody in your company. There are simple ways to find out. If you run your mouse over the address of an email, it will tell you whether it's coming from inside your company or outside your company. It will tell you who the person is that's sending you the email. Even though it looks like it's coming from one of your sister companies or somebody you do business with, but it may not be. When somebody asks for what should be inappropriate information, think twice before you give it to them. Never give out Social Security numbers. Don't give out login information for anybody.
Okay. If
it's somebody within your company, do a face-to-face. Make a phone call if you're not sure. If you get a notice supposedly from your bank, that you need to change your password, get out of that email, go into your bank, go into your internet access to your bank and see if there's anything there, or call your bank, and they'll tell you whether or not there's something going on. But that's a phishing email in most cases. Somebody's trying to get your password and your account numbers and your information.
Yeah, very, very well said. It's like, I get that email that says my Federal Express package couldn't be delivered. Click on this attachment.
Correct.
Also,
correct.
With those kind of things, especially like if you get a zip file as an attachment, you see a zip
oh,
file
God.
as an attachment, don't open those.
And in addition to which, just remember, the IRS will never contact you by phone or by email. They'll only send you a snail mail to start with.
Yeah.
They won't reach out until you've already made contact with them on the phone.
All right.
Which is a mistake people make.
Yep. All right, so question 4. How realistic is your plan to address security or compliance gaps that you might have today? Do a lot of business owners address this or think about this?
No, they don't. They don't. They need to really consider, just like you would consider business interruption insurance for your business in case you have a fire or something or physical damage to your property. Cyber insurance can be just as important, and the process to get it, to qualify for it, will help you figure out what kind of security gaps are there. It's compared to the possible consequences. It's a lot less expensive to go after the cyber policy than not. Ransomware, big problem today. Somebody ties up your computer, locks up your computer, encrypts it with ransomware. Do not pay them, because the chances are, if you pay them, they're going to be back. And it doesn't mean that they're going to open it back up again and let you back into your system. Mm-hmm. These people are professional thieves. They're coming in and robbing you instead of with a gun, with a password, with encryption. And once they found their way in once, they're coming back again.
And I'm sure that the best way, in just talking with different people and security experts out there, the best policy to ward off anybody trying to take over your systems and computers with ransomware is to have a good backup policy of your documentation and your data. And I believe people
and backup.
Right. While they may have a backup system for their data, they don't necessarily consider having a backup system for their documentation.
Well, you should always, the documentation that you have, if you're backing up all your files, your documentation should be one of the files that you're backing up off-site. There are plenty of services that you can get now. There's Carbonite, there's Dropbox, there's any number of these services out there. And we're not talking about, thousands of dollars. We're talking a few bucks a month that you can get, but you need to back it up at least daily. So the worst you can do is lose a day's worth of information.
Right. And that way, if somebody does take over your computer by ransomware, you could just forget about them, call, and restore your system.
Correct. You can wipe your system and reinstall everything. Okay. And that's really, if they don't get paid and they see that you don't care, they're not coming back.
Mm-hmm. Very good point. All right. So a fifth question is, do you have an established procedure to address security breaches? We kind of just touched on that a little bit with, being able to back up and have our information available. What else would you suggest?
It depends on your business. If you're required, if you are required, if you have customer business and you have names, addresses, social security numbers, driver's license numbers, dates of birth, there are two areas that I mainly deal with. Well, there are several areas, but there's personal identifiable information, PII. There's HIPAA compliance. There's PCI, which is credit card compliance. There's now a new set of cyber compliances for people licensed by the New York State Department of Finance. And the remediation requires you to notify your customers, to provide credit monitoring, and to fix your system. Now, the cost of a breach will average probably somewhere between anywhere from $150 to $350 per client. So if you start multiplying that by the number of clients or patients or customers, it can get pretty expensive pretty fast.
So
and those aren't my numbers. Those are, I'm sorry?
No, I was just going to add a little bit there, is that, you know, when you talk about a security and compliance, there's many different areas. I mean, you know,
right.
You're talking about just, you know, the address information or you know, personal information from employees. So if I'm taking
well, could be credit card, could be driver's license numbers, could be and you'd be surprised who has this. You know, think about who you give this information to. You know, it's like when I walk into a doctor's office and for a new doctor, they give me this form to fill out. They said, well, I need your social security number. I look at them, and my answer is, why? You have my medical card. You don't need my social security number, so why are you taking it? And they can't answer that because they don't know. Well, it's on the form. Well, that doesn't mean it's right.
Yeah, understood. Understood.
You don't want to give out that information if you don't have to.
Okay.
And you want to make sure if you give out that information that you question the fact that they are going to secure that information.
All right. So, again, looking at companies, different departments, you know, whether it's the HR or accounting department, the IT department, really there are some unique but very shared
information.
Issues that they
Sony had the data breach a few years ago where they claim at this point that the North Koreans came in because of the movie that they put out knocking their leader, and that Sony Pictures was hacked. Well, one of the things that hasn't finished yet is they hacked not only the movies and the computers, they hacked the HR, the Human Resources Department. They downloaded all the information on all of the Sony employees. And Sony has not been assessed the fine yet, but it's coming. That's the other thing. You know, your employer, if you're a business, as an employer, you have this information on your employees. You must protect that. Mm-hmm. Regulations say if you have over 50 employees, you have to be, your HR department has to be HIPAA compliant. Mm-hmm. Because at that point, you're also furnishing medical insurance.
Mm-hmm. And there is a difference between federal compliance standards and also local state compliance.
State, yeah, and having a violation of a federal like HIPAA or PCI is not federal, but something like a HIPAA breach means you also have to inform the state attorney general. 48 of the 50 states have PII, or personal identifiable information, regulations as to how to deal with a data breach of personal identifiable information. And I don't care what else you do. If you have personal identifiable information, you're always subject to that on a state level, regardless of what business you're in.
All right. So our next question, rounding out the top 7, is how confident are you in your ability to demonstrate compliance? And I believe while a business owner may sit down and say, well, yeah, I've done all this work and everything else, and I put all of these, you know, security features in, and my employees have this and that, doesn't this demonstrate compliance mean something different?
Yeah, there are different parts to compliance. The technical part, doing a deep dive and basically coming in and taking a snapshot of your technology to find out if that's up to date and doing what it's supposed to do is one area. Checking their policies and procedures to find out if they're handling information correctly is another area. Do they have the proper locks? Is information segmented so that there's limited access to certain types of information, even from your own employees, because everybody doesn't need to have access to everything. Mm-hmm. I was in an office last year, where there was one password for the entire office, and there were six or seven employees. And I said, that doesn't make any sense. Every computer, everybody should have their own password, their login password. And the second time I came back in, when I brought this out, they had just let 2 employees go the week before. And I said, did you change at least the one password? And they said, well, they can't get in the office anymore. I said, they don't need to get in the office. They can sit in the parking lot with a computer and get it. Mm-hmm. And they looked at me like, uh-oh. And this was a 6-7 person office. This was not a big office.
Right. Sometimes common sense is the best practice.
It's only common sense if you understand what it is you're looking at or what you're thinking about. If you don't know, you don't know. So you need to engage somebody who can inform you. Look, none of us are experts in everything.
Actually, that's a good
point.
So we need to. And it leads us into the 7th question. If any gaps exist, do you view the ability to recruit and retain talent and expertise as a top priority? So just like you
Absolutely.
Saying, if something happens or if there are questions, do you try to do it yourself, or should you really go to somebody like you who can provide all of the detailed information that they would need in order to meet those standards and be compliant and have the security they need?
You need somebody with some expertise, but there are plenty of resources that you can look up that can advise you of things that you can do for yourself. But once the horse is out of the barn, it's a lot harder to put it in. The other thing is understand something. Things like email. I know an attorney that for years had an AOL email. 25% of all the single practice attorneys I run into have an AOL, Gmail, or Yahoo email account. The free email accounts are not secure. The information is scanned. And this particular attorney had his email breached, and the information stolen. I think it was the 2nd or 3rd time. And I yelled at him. I said, "Come on, get a secure email. It's a few it's less than $100 a year. Why are you playing around with this?" And he finally did. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Free, you're getting what you pay for.
Right, exactly. All right. So we've broken down 8 areas where a small business owner should address compliance challenges. And for the audience, we're going to lightly touch on that. We're coming to the end of our show for now, and I do want to get to some of the questions that the attendees submitted. But the 8 areas within a business to address compliance change is security intelligence, the ability to address and identify those areas, fraud, where it may happen, and that's not only fraud in transactions, but also fraud within your employees, which leads us into people. All right. Do you have the policies and procedures outlined and established that train your employees what to do and how to address certain issues when they do crop up? We touched on data and your applications. and how to protect those, your infrastructure, business partners and outsourcing, and also threat intelligence. And that threat intelligence is by partnering with or going to people like you, Andy, who can really do that intelligence and do the assessments for them to show them the gaps and the holes within their compliance and security vulnerabilities. All right, so what I'd like to do now is get to a couple of questions. We're coming up on the close of the show.
Please.
So one of the questions from our attendees was, what does one have to do to be compliant in today's health environment? So I believe we touched on a lot of that, but Andy, do you want to give that person a quick answer?
There's a lot of things that you have to touch on. My email was on the beginning. It's aj@hipacp.com. If you send me an email, I will be happy to send you a list of all the areas that you have to cover based on the HIPAA regulations on a security basis.
All right, and everybody participating in this will get an email from us and also have your contact information so that they can get to you. All right. The
Not a
next
problem.
question was, this is more along the HR related, and somebody was asking, if somebody works 9 to 5:30 and their paycheck says 37.5 hours, does that mean they get an hour for lunch? And in regards to that, what I found was that I spoke to a couple of HR people, and it really doesn't come down to how many hours they work a week. It comes to how many hours they work a day. If a person is working 6 hours, they are entitled to a half hour, minimum of a half an hour for lunch. Now that's unpaid lunch. But I believe the standard here in New York State is that that person is entitled to actually up to an hour. So for the person that submitted that question, again, don't look at it on a weekly basis, but look at it how your employee works on a daily basis. And if they're in that 6 hours or more per day, then yes, they are entitled to at least 30 minutes for that lunch break. They could, regulations give them an hour. And also, I was told that those 15-minute breaks, coffee breaks, they don't apply to that standard. All right, the other thing, we talked about ransomware. Somebody had asked a question, should I pay the ransomware? I think we talked about that. And the last question we're going to have right now is somebody was asking, do I need to have written policies and procedures for compliance and security? Andy?
The simple answer is yes, because the only thing any agency is going to be able to audit is policies and procedures. They're never going to try and access your computer network. But they want to see that you've documented what it is you're supposed to do, and the fact that you've trained your personnel in those standards, so that that's what they're asking for. That's the most important thing they want to see. And in most cases, there's an expression we use: a bad policy is better than no policy at all. As long as you are making a good faith attempt at being compliant, you may get a slap on the wrist, but they're not going to take your arm away. Okay. The last comment I want to make is compliance is a journey. It's not a destination. Nobody is 100% compliant.
Well, that's very good, Andy. And I want to thank you for being a guest on this show. Again, for all of our attendees, we hope this was helpful in terms of guiding you along the way of being compliant and in and being secure. But if you have any questions, you can email us at info@liasb.com. Again, I want to thank you and hope to see you in our next show. And everyone, have a great night.